Hey, I'm John Cannell. Today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making a tarte tatin. So let's get started. First off, thaw your puff pastry, and if you want to make your own at home, it's actually really easy. I'll put a link in the description box for my puff pastry video. Right now we're peeling and slicing 4 apples, medium-sized. I like to use Honeycrisp because they really maintain their shape after baking and taste delicious, but many other kinds will work well. Basically any firm baking apple like a Granny Smith. You can let me know in the comments what your favorite apple to use for this kind of recipe is.
I like Red Delicious.
Not biting on that. So, if you watch this channel, you know I normally rag on Red Delicious apples. I talked to an apple expert because I live in New England, so I've lived close to apple people now. And apparently, Red Delicious were originally delicious. They were red and delicious, but over time they were just kind of bred to be really shelf stable and look pretty. So they lost a lot of their flavor, but you can still find some tasty Red Delicious apples that are more of an heirloom variety, if that makes sense. I don't buy it though. Just putting out the public service announcement, I don't believe it. You can tell me if you believe it or not. Alrighty. Right now I'm gonna cut the flesh from the core. Is that what we do? Peel quarter and cut, yeah, that's wrong. That has to go in a bag for the kids. I'll peel another apple. Okay, now we're gonna quarter our apples and just remove the core and any little bit of skin that's left over. Mind your fingers. So for this tart, we wanna have beautiful big pieces of apple because we'll be arranging those in concentric circles right in the pan. The magic of the tart just flips out and looks beautiful with no decorating needed. Fun fact, I've mispronounced this dessert my entire life. I always called it tarte tatin, which doesn't make any sense. It's one of those things I picked up as a child and no one corrected me until Brian did earlier today. Thanks, Brian. The name actually comes from the Tatin sisters who ran the Tatin Hotel in the 19th century. This 19th century French dessert is named after the Tatin sisters who invented it for their hotel. Thank you so much. Our apples are ready. Now we're gonna make this really easy caramel. The only thing that you should have is a 9-inch cast iron pan, but you could make this in a cake pan too, if you feel like doing that. I don't. Into our 9-inch cast iron pan, we're adding 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. That's 133 grams. Add it in like mostly an even layer. Do your best. Now we're gonna sprinkle in about 1/3 of a cup of water, 6 tablespoons. It's nice if you can get all the sugar wet. It's nice if that happens. Because you don't wanna disturb your caramel when it's cooking. Just leave it alone, let it do its thing. We're gonna place this over medium heat right now and just stir occasionally until it starts to bubble. Once it starts bubbling, just leave it alone and avoid temptation. You're probably using a dark pan for this. Keep a close eye on your caramel. You want it to be a light golden color before you add the butter in. If it gets too dark, once you keep cooking it with the apples and everything else, it's gonna be bitter and just not where you want your tarte tatin to be. So, eyes on the prize. If you do notice a hot spot in your caramel, go ahead and just give it a swirl because some places will cook a little bit first. So swirl your caramel as needed if some parts are becoming darker too quickly. My caramel is getting close. You can see it is light golden brown. I'm just gonna swirl it a bit and that's good. Now it's time to add that butter in. You're gonna stir it up and just be careful because it will bubble up and it could get wild. So keep an eye on it. You may need to reduce the temperature in addition to stirring. Once the butter's incorporated, it's time to add our apples in and we're gonna just place them in carefully, no splashing, and continue to move them around, coat with the caramel and cook through. We're gonna cook our apples in the caramel for about 15 minutes. Every few minutes, give them a turn. You want them to kind of cook evenly on the outside. And here's the deal. At first, your caramel will be kind of seizing up and you're gonna think, oh my gosh, I went too far. But as the apples lose some of their liquid and cool the caramel down, it'll loosen up and everything will be just fine. You may want to reduce the temperature significantly, especially if your stove runs hot like mine does. Okay. My apples are just about ready. Look at this beautiful golden caramel color that we have. This is why we didn't want to overcook the caramel in the beginning. If we had, this would have been just bitter and too dark. This gets set aside. Ooh, hot. This gets carefully set aside. And now we're gonna roll out our puff pastry. Be right back. The apples and caramel are ready. The easy part is the puff pastry. I'm using just a pre-made puff pastry. If you wanna make your own, it's so easy. I do have that in the description box. Just did a video on puff pastry. I'm rolling out my puff pastry. All I need is 10 inches because we're gonna be cutting out a 10-inch circle for this. In fact, that's enough right now. You don't want to roll it too thin or it won't puff up as much as you'd like. Place that circle on top and just cut it out. Ah, so satisfying. This gets put right on top of our tart to bake, but first we're gonna arrange our apples beautifully. I'm using 2 forks to arrange my apples into concentric circles. So we want the outside of the apple to face down, so you're gonna be looking at the cut side. I feel like I'm 1 apple slice short. What's the smallest one I could pull in here? I mean, I'm so short of apples. I wonder what I could do. As soon as all your apples are arranged in a nice pattern, you're ready to pop that puff pastry top on. So, carefully lift it up, place it right over the top, and the one thing you want to do is tuck the edges in. You can use a knife or a spatula for that, not your fingers. Just tuck the edge in, it'll help it all puff up really nicely. Transfer your pan onto a rimmed baking sheet, and we'll be baking this at 400 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes or until the top is golden and all puffed up. Those apples are infused with the most amazing caramel, and the puff pastry that's underneath is just a little chef's kiss of texture. Serve with your choice of ice cream or whipped cream and enjoy. If you like this recipe, check out my Apple playlist. Hope you get a chance to make this recipe, and I'll see you in the next video.